So there's nothing intense about today's gospel. Really, the stakes are low. Stop worrying. Everything's fine. Not. This is a very difficult gospel, isn't it? And this is a couple weeks in a row we've gotten this kind of, Ali versus Frazier. I don't know if I can use that analogy anymore. It makes me look very old, and none of the young people are going to know what I'm talking about. Anyway, this is really a gladiatorial game type gospel. This is rock'em sock'em robots. Everything on the line. Nothing reserved. And that's life, ladies and gentlemen. I'm reading a great book right now. Actually, I'm not reading it. I'm listening to it. Anybody do audio books here? They're cool, aren't they? I really enjoy them. You can be in the car for a little while and you can listen to them. But I listen to them at home, and I listen to them walking Pluto Dog around. So the other day, right after the 4 o'clock Mass, I had my earphones on when Mass got out. I hadn't looked at my watch. And people were saying, "Hi, Father, hi, Pluto." I wasn't hearing them, and then I saw them, and I started waving back. But I'm listening to this great book by William Shearer. And William Shearer, of course, is a great historical writer who was a reporter for the New York Times in the 20s, 30s, and 40s in Berlin. And the name of the book is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And I'm on the chapter where Hitler and the Nazis are torturing and subduing Mother Church in Germany. And we all say this couldn't happen. But Austria and Germany were very Catholic nations. And yet, it got to the point when the Munich decrees were put out and the religious regulations were promulgated, that crucifixes were taken out of churches and the swastika put in instead. Where Bibles in Germany were no longer able to be printed at all. And so what we hear today in this online world of ours, we kind of say, well, this has never happened before. Well, it has happened before, where the world has gone completely secular. It happened before the Great Flood, in a very primitive world where there were no cell phones, there were no computers, there were barely clothes. And we have to remember this. Man has constantly gone out of his way to follow some idiot who takes us away from God, or follow some philosophy that takes us away from God, or follow some sort of belief that is opposite of Jesus Christ. And so it is today. In a world over secular, a world that talks down God, a world that describes God in newspapers with a small g instead of a large one, as I've indicated before. This is the world we live in. And some of you may be sick of me talking about this, but guess what? I'm not going to stop. Because this is what the crusade of the church must be. Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world. He is our only hope. Without him, we are doomed. And he has set a way for us to follow. Jesus is talking in this magnificent gospel by parables, but then he makes it very clear to the apostles what he's saying. In our world today, we don't like talking about the evil one, Lucifer. We don't like talking about him because that indicates that there is an alternate destination that we might have to go to. A bad place where you would welcome a visit from an IRS investigator. This is what I'm talking about. I mean, we like to pretend that that world doesn't exist, but that world is omnipresent. The evil one has put a lot of points up on the scoreboard recently because this is his kind of world right now. The kind of world where everything is about me. And those people aren't as good as us. Oh, look at the color of that person. They're less than us. Sounds very much like the Third Reich, doesn't it? Let's keep the foreigners out. We have to be very, very careful. These are the ways of the evil one. And Christ talks about this. He says, look, I'm not going to eliminate like the Father did when he sent the flood down and wiped out the whole Kashnabel. Remember? Everybody got wiped out, except for the select few that made it onto the ark, and 2 of every species. He promised us he'd never do that again. So he allows the weeds to grow up with the wheat. Wheat, even in the church. You ever see symbols inside church and even on some priests' vestments of wheat? I have one that has wheat on it. I'm not wearing it today. I use it for weddings. It's enrichment. It's the beginning of things. It's life. And isn't that true with a beautiful wedding of 2 folks, a guy and a gal that adore each other? And they're going to build a life together and make munchkins together, God willing. Isn't it beautiful to watch that happen? And so we have the symbol of wheat. Wheat has always been to Mother Church the sign of life, the sign of beginning. And so what does Christ use in his parable the wheat for? That which will survive, that which will flourish, that which will feed us. And then there's the weed. Now tell me, any gardeners here today? I'd like one of you to stand up and be an advocate for weeds. Please, someone. Nobody likes weeds. Nobody. Weeds squelch out the life in the plants and in the flowers. Weeds damage beautiful roses. Weeds are lousy. Weeds are, to forgive the term, evil in a garden. And that's what weeds are in our society. Weeds are the lesser angels of our nature. Weeds are those who cause conflict and don't want to resolve it. Sometimes conflict for conflict's sake. You ever see that in your family? We forget what the battle is about, but the crusade must continue. We have to step away from that. We have to be interested in collecting the harvest of the wheat that feeds, the wheat that enriches, the wheat that saves. Everywhere in our world we see this conflict constantly going on. And look what we've said is okay in society now. Think of this for a second. The other day, this was actually yesterday, Father Chris had more masses than me this week, and they actually gave me Saturday off. Well, not really. I had a funeral in the morning, but nonetheless, I had most of Saturday off. And so I decided, instead of going to confession on my day off, Monday, I'm going to go down to the Caps on Saturday. It's a fun day to go down there. There's more people. It's nice. So I drove down, and it was a nice day out, so I took the 2-seater, put the top down, and zoomed down there. I sort of maintained all traffic regulations. It would be a waste of the inspiration of the man who invented that car not to test it once in a while. And I'm heading down, and there is this motorcycle group. There's 2 of them, 2 kids. And they were going 150 miles an hour. 150 miles an hour. How can I guess this? I was going 79. And they were going twice my speed. Twice my speed. Now, I just use that as an example of the selfishness in our society. What's going to happen if one of these kids gets in an accident and kills a family? And this is just an example. I'm on another section of the highway, and suddenly I'm smelling marijuana on the highway. Now, I'm against the legalization of this nonsense to begin with, okay? I think anything that has people leaving their life, this reality and going to La La Land is not my cup of tea, and I used to send people to prison for using marijuana in the Navy because they then go on to airplanes and stuff and put people in danger, or nuclear power plants. But for medical purposes, I understand it. no problem. But when you have vehicles going down the street, people using marijuana on the highway, it's kind of like the same as having, a shot of Jack down the highway. This is just bad. And I'm using the mildest, because we have munchkins here, of the sorts of examples of problems in our society. We have to work these problems out. We have to demand that people act with courtesy and follow the law and treat each other decently. You ever see a situation in a restaurant where someone comes into the restaurant and asks for a cup of water and they're obviously homeless and they're turned away by the owner? I've seen that quite a few times. I don't want my customers to see people like you. Wow. Pray God that owner doesn't go to the pearly gates and have Jesus the Christ say to him, I don't want my admitted customers to see someone like you. Wow. Although I did see a really good ad the other day that showed a line of basset hounds going into heaven, and the humans were in one line and the basset hounds were in another, and under the basset hound sign it said pre-approved. Now, I just want to end this homily on a bit of light, because it's a pretty dark gospel. It shows us the bad things that can happen to us. But I want you to think about our responsorial psalm today. And what was that about? God's forgiveness. God's forgiveness. A lot of things are wrong with our society. And a lot of people are doing really stupid things. And a lot of people are super selfish. And there are really big, dishonest, big problems in our communities. However, God, until our last breath, sits there and says, John, Sally, Bill, whoever, come to me, and I will forgive you. All you have to do is ask. Do we have an incredible God or what? All we have to do is ask. And by the way, there's something else. If you're having trouble with a particular sin, and you come back to him 2 days later and say, I fell down again, does he wag his finger at you and say, oh, get out of here, loser, I forgave you? Although that sounds like something some of us might have done in our lifetime. He says, ask me again. Ask me again. And we do. And then what do we hear? The incredible words of the church absolving us from sin. Remember, and now I really am finishing, remember, no complaints. I say Mass pretty fast, okay? In fact, I'm getting complaints that I say it too fast, okay? Remember, Mother Church never says no to us. And why is that? Why do I talk so much about confession? Why do I talk so much about forgiveness? Because what were the words of Jesus Christ, his first words to his apostles after peace be with you on the night of the resurrection? It's Easter night. He appears before his buddies. And instead of saying, great to see you, wonderful to see you, boy, that was a bad experience on Friday. No. Nothing like that. What does he say? Go forth and forgive sins. The sins you forgive shall be forgiven. The sins you retain shall be retained. Ladies and gentlemen, never be afraid to come to God for help. In fact, the only people that are in trouble are those too proud to do so. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.